It all starts 70 years ago. Back then, the world completely changed. Out of nowhere, dungeons began popping up everywhere. And in no time at all, they spread across the entire planet. These dungeons triggered a total revolution in the world. Inside them, humanity discovered the existence of mana through crystals. Soon after, scientists realized this energy could force human evolution. Thanks to this artificial transformation, humanity ended up awakening incredible powers. One of those powers was magic, and the other was special skills. These new techniques became essential survival tools for fighters, especially for the adventurers facing the brutal dangers of the dungeons. With that, the scene cuts to a chaotic battle. The adventurers were having a hard time taking on a monster. The mage summons a magical barrier, trying to block the dragon's attack. While the group struggles to defend themselves, the MC just watches everything. Right after, he walks up to the front lines, leaving the mage completely clueless. He had a serious look on his face without showing a single trace of fear. I can already tell this MC is a total bad man. He begins gathering mana in his fist and charges straight at the dragon. Looking like Saitama, he gets ready to throw a heavy right hook. And with just one punch, he completely wipes out the dragon. Everyone looks at that scene in complete shock. The swordsman says that was absolutely insane. As the hero starts walking away, the mage in the hat asks him in confusion where he is going. He then turns back to the adventurers, and with a dark glare, he says his goal now is to go take out his own demon wife. Here I am looking for a wife, and he wants to eliminate his. He was giving off a dark aura, completely consumed by a desire for revenge. To understand the reason for this reaction, we need to go back 17 years earlier. Someone unexpectedly steps through the portal. It was the MC, named Saishiro, and he was carrying an injured young Oni girl in his arms. If this is his wife, I want one of these too, and old Oni shouts in relief. Seeing that Ruka, his daughter, is safe and sound, Ruka runs crying into her father's arms while apologizing for the scare. The father asks for the name of his daughter's savior, and he shyly replies that his name is Saishiro. The old man insists on giving a reward, but Saishiro turns it down, saying he just did the decent thing. Without hesitation, the father decides he is going to offer his own daughters hand in marriage. Saishiro gets a bit confused hearing this. If it were me, I wouldn't think twice. She is part of the powerful Oni race, known for possessing overwhelming strength. Onis were the privileged class who paid fortunes to implant high-level mana. This massive disparity in magical power ended up creating a social divide between the races. Under Rigo's leadership, their family became one of the largest and most feared Oni clans. Saishiro says he feels honored by the offer, knowing how tough things were for humans there. He explains that humans can only get one implant, but his father-in-law insists that it does not matter. The old man holds both of their hands. He confesses that both races have fought way too much already, and that it needs to finally end. Rigo gently asks the two young people to become the ultimate bridge of peace between them, with both of them feeling quite embarrassed. Saishiro accepts and officially joins the family. I want to know how this turned into pure hatred, but living inside Oni society turns out to be full of strict rules and super complicated. Fortunately, his father-in-law was always around to give support. Every time Saishiro felt lost, Rigo made sure to encourage him to keep going. Meanwhile, Saishiro and Ruka lived moments full of sweetness while waiting for the baby to be born. A short time later, a beautiful little girl with black hair was born, bringing even more joy. The whole family enjoyed a wonderful married life, with the grandfather happily playing with his granddaughter. However, all that happiness was painfully cut short when the beloved father-in-law passed away under heavy rain. Sashiro stands outside the house where the funeral is taking place. He looks worriedly at his phone, wondering where Ruka could have gone at such an important moment. After losing her father, Ruka's attitude changed, and she started going out all the time, only coming home late at night. That is dirty, poor MC. I hope she's not stepping out on him. But it was not just her, as the moderate Onis who supported the former leader also distanced themselves from him. Because of that, the MC ended up alone with his daughter. To make matters worse, violent conflicts between humans and Onis, which had previously slowed down started rising again. 6 months after the father-in-law's death, Sashiro is furious with the situation. He was being held down by 2 Onis. And to make the situation worse, the person who ordered them to do this to him was none other than Ruka, his own wife. Sashiro screams his wife's name, but she just flashes a sinister smile. She coldly says that everything is very simple, and that she made a final decision about the future. Without any hesitation, the woman coldly announces that she is filing for divorce. She clings to another man's arm, saying that now she is going to be truly happy by his side. Oh no, our MC got played. I hope he cuts her down. Her new partner gives a mocking smirk, clearly enjoying Sashiro's humiliation. Sashiro is in shock, realizing that Guy is Kuki Shishio, a member of a rival family. He screams in desperation, reminding her that they were supposed to unite to lead the family after her father's death. However, Ruka starts kicking him, and he screams, asking for the reason behind all of this. She calls him weak, untalented, and hornless, saying he is just trash who accepts getting walked all over. She coldly mocks the idea that they were ever a real couple. Ruka angrily states that she would have never married someone so pathetic if her father had not insisted. Suddenly, young Matsuruka opens the door running and screams in desperation for her mother to stop. The girl tearfully begs her to stop, leaving Sashiro extremely worried by her presence. Crying heavily, she pours her heart out, saying she cannot take seeing the 2 of them fighting all the time anymore. The girl begs her mother to go back to being the caring, gentle person she used to be. Ruka ignores her own daughter's tears and starts walking coldly toward her. Surprisingly, the woman approaches and wraps Matsuruka in a warm hug. The girl feels immense relief and smiles, believing her mother had finally returned to normal. But Matsuruka's expression changes to pure terror as blood begins dripping from her mouth. Ruka had just plunged a knife into her own daughter. That complete snake. I take back what I said. I do not want a wife like this monster. That blow was fatal. In tears, the girl agonizes without understanding why her mother did that. After that, Matsuruka collapses helplessly onto the floor while blood spreads across the room. Sashiro watches that atrocity wide-eyed, paralyzed by the extreme horror of the scene. Ruka calmly licks the blood off her hands and begins explaining the cruel reason behind her act. She reveals with an insane smile that Shishio did not want to date a woman who already had children. The MC did not just get played, he was completely destroyed. There is nothing left for him. Sashiro desperately tries to call out to his daughter, but the girl no longer responds. Memories of happy moments and Matsuruka's bright smile floods Sashiro's mind. Overcome by unbearable pain, he lets out an ear-splitting scream of pure hatred. Awakening an absurd strength, Sashiro hurls both guards away with a single move. The father charges forward in blind fury, screaming that Matsuruka was her own daughter, whom she was supposed to protect. He runs desperately toward the girl's fallen body, crying out her name. However, before he can reach her, Shishio cuts him off by stepping right in front of him. The rival looks down at him with pure arrogance. A terrifying, ghostly skull-shaped aura appears behind Shishio, showcasing his terrifying power. Sashiro grits his teeth, feeling an overwhelming rage build inside his chest. He stares at his rival with deep hatred. Shaking from all the built-up anger, Shishio just gives a mocking smirk back with an air of total superiority. Suddenly, the sound of police sirens echoes through the area, leaving Sashiro confused. He wonders who could have called the authorities while watching the patrol cars. Desperate, he demands that Ruka turn herself in to pay for the horrific crime she committed. She lets out a sarcastic laugh, finding the suggestion of turning herself into the police hilarious. The woman says that in reality, Sashiro will be framed as the sole culprit for their daughter's death. The officers storm the room with weapons drawn, immediately ordering everyone to freeze. They point straight at Sashiro, shouting for him to get his hands up right now. Surrounded by police officers, he realizes the trap set by his ex-wife. Sashiro tries to shout that he is innocent, but Ruka cuts him off with coldness, calling his name. She begins speaking in a dark tone about the advantages of holding a position of power in society. The woman displays a psychotic smile as she says that power exists precisely to manipulate the truth. He stands completely frozen in horror at the level of cruelty in that creature. She explains that now that her father is gone, the rules of the clan have radically changed. Ruka throws it in his face that no Oni from the Shinki family will ever listen to her. Defend him again. He stands covered in rage, unable to accept being wronged in such a cruel manner. Determined, he picks up his phone from the ground while the crystal on his glove starts glowing. Intensely, Saishiro dashes off at top speed, fleeing the scene before the officers can react. Ruka just waves mockingly, waving goodbye as she watches her ex-husband flee in desperation. She makes a quick hand gesture to give the final order to attack him. The sound of a gunshot echoes violently through the residence's hallway. Saishiro is hit by multiple shots in the back, spreading blood all over his suit. He ends up collapsing onto the outdoor courtyard floor, gravely wounded and surrounded by a pool of blood with blurry vision. He hears his enemies' voices approaching to check if he is still alive. A gun barrel is pointed at his forehead, while he laments that his daughter never got to receive mana. The officer asks if he should finish the job, but Ruka coldly orders him to wait. She pulls Saishiro's hair and says, smiling, that she just had an incredible idea for his end. Without strength, the young man just cries and mentally begs for someone to save his daughter. A mysterious voice whispers in his mind, asking him to hurry and wake up from that nightmare. Carried by the guards, he is brought helplessly to the edge of a dark cliff. Below them lies a deep abyss filled with dark mist and scary energy. That massive hole leads straight down into the dangerous depths of one of the dungeons. She cruelly says she will throw him down there to become monster food and erase all trace of him. She adds that he will pass away hated by everyone. Remembered as a cowardly murderer, Ruka leans close to his ear to whisper one last insult. In personal humiliation, with a cruel final push, the woman drops him into the abyss without a shred of remorse. She shows a devilish smile and mocks their intimacy. One last time before his fall, as he falls into the darkness, he mentally apologizes to his late father-in-law for failing, with tears in his eyes. He deeply regrets being unable to protect his beloved daughter. The young man hits the stone floor of the dungeon, severely injured and surrounded by a pool of blood. However, an enigmatic figure wearing a red cloak appears and observes him from above. Saishiro lets out a faint groan of pain, indicating that he is miraculously still breathing. He opens his eyes with difficulty and tries to understand where he is while the figure watches him closely. Looking around, he realizes he ended up falling into the deepest, most dangerous floor of the dungeon. Suddenly, the green ring on his hand starts emanating a glowing recovery energy. A system window reveals that an ancient temporary survival skill kept him alive after the fall. He laments that 10 years have already passed since he retired, making him far too weak. He recalls back when he was a respectable A-rank adventurer and decides to fight for his life. He remembers starting to explore dungeons in the past, solely to pay for his mother's medical treatment. Back then, he took on extremely dangerous magical beasts on the deepest floors. As he tries to stand up in the present, the phone inside his pocket slightly slips out. Saishiro notices the cracked device lying on the stone ground, faintly illuminating the dark looking. Closely, he recognizes that it is the phone belonging to his late daughter, Matsurika. The horrific image of Ruka, smiling after committing the crime, returns to haunt his mind. He holds the device against his chest and begins to cry, asking for forgiveness for failing to protect her. Suddenly, a cheerful tune starts playing on the screen. Catching the injured man's attention, he wipes his tears and realizes in confusion that it is a scheduled alarm on her phone. Saishiro remembers the day his daughter said she used the exact same passcode as him, so she would not forget. She had planned everything with love to make his life easier in some way. She used a smile, saying that way it would be much easier to remember everything with a heavy heart. He types the passcode into his daughter's cracked phone screen. He presses the screen with trembling, blood-covered fingers, finally unlocking the device. The home screen lights up, and he notices a Notes app highlighted with a yellow icon. Driven by curiosity and longing, he opens the personal notes file, she kept as he begins reading the first few lines. Saishiro's eyes widen in total shock. He reads devastating accounts of physical abuse and humiliation the girl endured in secret at school. She shared that her own mother physically assaulted her so she would stay quiet about everything. The final note reveals the extreme trauma of a miscarriage the girl suffered following the beatings. Completely shattered by the cruel truth, he whispers in despair over his own mistakes. The phone slips from his hands as he blames himself for failing completely as a father. He punches the stone floor in tears, wondering why he never noticed her pain. Amid his weeping, Saishiro feels that his neglect was just as painful as the beatings. He kneels in the deep darkness of the dungeon, consumed by overwhelming bitterness and regret. While he grieves that his daughter suffered in silence to spare him, terrifying creatures emerge behind him. He completely ignores the danger around him and keeps begging his late daughter for forgiveness. A giant mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth opens directly above his head to devour him. Suddenly, an imposing voice echoes, calling him a servant and commanding him to wake up at once. The mysterious red-cloaked figure appears before Saishiro, ignoring the presence of the monsters. The young man stares at that enigmatic person with effort, trying to focus his weak vision. With a voice failing from exhaustion and injuries, he asks who that person really is. She makes a joke about the night they spent together, but quickly says she was just kidding. She pulls back her hood, revealing her white hair. With glowing red eyes, she proudly reveals that she is a powerful and feared vampire. Saishiro is extremely surprised, as he never expected to run into a legendary creature like that. Out of nowhere, a sharp, terrible headache strikes him violently, making him groan. Flashbacks display the memory of a light-haired girl lying unconscious on a sandy beach. She had been taken in by a simple couple from ancient Japan who fed her with great care. The young girl smiled happily, showing small fangs that revealed her true nature. However, the warm atmosphere changes when her eyes turn an intimidating red color. Monstrous creatures invaded the place and slaughtered all the beloved people who welcomed her. The girl tried to fight back frantically, but ended up taking brutal blows from the invaders. The enemies attacked her without any mercy, overpowering her strength with heavy strikes. Just like Saishiro, she ended up thrown into the dark abyss of the dungeon to pass away. Alone, even while falling, she displayed a face full of fury and resentment toward her tormentors. Back in reality, Saishiro is left completely confused by all those sudden visions in his mind. Eliana explains that those were her memories, shared after she gave him a bit of her blood to save him. She says she was also thrown down here by evil beings, very similar to what humans face. She calmly crouches before him with a very serious look, waiting for his reaction. Eliana shows a cracked phone to Saishiro and says she understands what he is going through, since losing a daughter must make him hate his demon wife. At that point, she flashes a truly sinister smile, revealing her true intentions. Saishiro gets a bit hesitant seeing that look. She then suggests they join forces so they can satisfy the grudges they share together. Even so, Saishiro lowers his head in discouragement and says, "That is totally impossible." He explains that Ruka's power is massive and on another level, being way too strong even for A-rank adventurers, on top of having massive influence. Suddenly, Saishiro notices something on her hand and gets surprised seeing that she is hurt. Eliana explains she got injured while saving him from those magical beasts a little earlier. She admits that even though she is a vampire, she is at her limit and it is only a matter of time before the beasts devour them. But she proposes that if he makes a pact with her, taking down that demon will be easy, though he will only have 1 year left to live. She adds that the more power he uses, the shorter his remaining lifespan will be. The vampire holds out her bloody hand and tells him to choose if he prefers to pass away clinging to his vengeance or if he prefers to transform into a true demon of vengeance. While the terrifying monsters close in, facing that drop of blood, Saishiro gets an unhinged look and repeats that he wants to become the demon of vengeance. Without any hesitation, he reaches out and grabs Eliana's injured hand. Once and for all, Saishiro states there is no reason to hesitate and begins consuming her blood to achieve his revenge. An extremely powerful blue energy begins wrapping around Saishiro, making his eye glow intensely. Overcome by this overwhelming power, he lets out an ear-splitting roar. As electricity tears his clothes apart, Eliana warns that forming a contract with her is not just drinking blood, but a rebirth that causes hellish pain. However, Saishiro grits his teeth hard amid the blue sparks and promises himself that this hurts like nothing. He starts crying while thinking that, compared to the suffering Matsurika went through, that pain is absolutely nothing. At that moment, Eliana notices that the magical beasts have just spotted them. Suddenly, a hand wrapped in blue electricity extends protectively in front of her. Saishiro tells the vampire to step back and thinks to himself that he is definitely going straight to hell for this. He clenches his fist with all his strength and says there is no way he can pass away just yet. Completely enraged and shirtless, the MC throws a devastating punch, screaming that he will take all those beasts down with him. The attack creates a colossal shockwave of blue energy that completely obliterates everything around Eliana. Watches that entire display of power totally stunned, wondering if he is even real. The MC stands tall amid the blue lightning and thinks with pure hatred that he is going to end everyone. He vows he will eliminate every single one of them without a shred of mercy. Saishiro commandingly decrees that that demon needs to be completely destroyed. Now, this is getting good. I hope he wrecks that monster. A blue system window appears, revealing the skill pact of the mighty arms, which boosts unarmed attack power by 200%. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to an intersection in a large city packed with skyscrapers and traffic. On one of the buildings, a massive TV screen broadcasts the news with a female anchor speaking. The report covers the murder case of the eldest daughter of the Shinki family, revealing that 5 days have already passed since the incident. The journalist adds that the victim's father, who is the prime suspect, has still not been captured. Next, Ruka appears on TV pretending to be a grieving mother, crying and saying she just wants him to turn himself in soon. The news explains that the Shinki family controls dungeons and possesses a massive fortune, which raises suspicions of a power struggle. However, reality is far different, and the TV news anchor appears in undergarments. Completely bruised and kneeling on the floor, Ruka pops up furious with a whip in hand, asking why she had to bring up their fortune. While the woman begs for mercy, fake crying, Ruka steps on the journalist's throat and says she is just a tragic mother and that money has nothing to do with it. Consumed by rage, the demon brutally attacks the poor woman while shouting insults at her. After thrashing her, Ruka commands her henchmen to clean up that filth immediately, so she does not have to smell the human stench. At that moment, Kuki Shishio walks into the room wearing a white suit and tells Ruka to calm down a bit as they drag the unconscious news anchor away. Shishio remarks that media outlets are nothing but trash and she should not stress over it. Ruka forms an evil smile toward her ally and agrees that he is completely right about that. The two then share a warm embrace in the middle of the luxurious room where it all went down. Ruka begins remembering that ever since she was born, she always had absolutely everything she ever wanted in life. She recalls her younger days when she was surrounded by colossal mountains of cash. She always enjoyed an extremely wealthy, lavish lifestyle, picking out the most expensive clothes possible. Ruka continues reflecting on her past, remembering that she always had servants who did absolutely everything she commanded. She also recalls that she had a fine man by her side, referring to the handsome and powerful Shishio. But despite having all of that, the villain reveals there was still one thing she had failed to obtain. What she desired most in the world was to achieve absolute power above everyone else. She thinks to herself that her father is finally gone, and that annoying Saishiro has also been cleared from her path. With a sinister smirk on her face, Ruka silently plans that, eventually, even Shishio will fall. She chuckles and thinks that two rulers cannot share the same domain, showing she intends to betray him in the future. Back in the present, Shishio's phone begins buzzing loudly inside his pocket. He mentions he was summoned by the Kuki family and tells Ruka to keep the party going without him, as he will be right back. Shishio steps into the elevator and departs, while Ruka and her personal bodyguard watch him leave. The villain sees him off with a sweet smile, closely accompanied by her loyal guard, Amatsukawa. Amatsukawa stands staring at Ruka in silence, totally spellbound by his boss's striking presence. The bodyguard thinks in fascination that Ruka looks unbelievably gorgeous today, glowing like never before. He remembers protecting her for 18 years now and gets emotional, but gets cut off when Ruka suddenly calls his name. Ruka repeats his name in a serious tone, and the bodyguard quickly answers, trying to hide his nerves. She then coldly commands Amatsukawa to come along and serve as her escort to the ceremony location. The guard's expression instantly changes, adopting a very serious, determined posture to fulfill the order. Amatsukawa bows respectfully and answers that he understood Ruka's order perfectly. He swears to himself that he will protect her at all costs, even if it ends up costing him his own life. Nearby, one of the guards watches the entrance of the hall where the funeral of the late Matsuruka is taking place. Inside the huge, luxurious hall, Ruka steps up to the main altar in front of numerous guests to kick off the event. Into the microphone, she lies, stating that her late father, Reigo, always advocated for harmony between Onis and humans. She continues her fake speech, claiming his pleas were in vain and Matsuruka perished at the hands of a human. Completing the act, Ruka bows her head before everyone and begins faking uncontrollable sobbing. The other Onis present at the venue get deeply moved and saddened, believing her flawless performance. Behind her fake sorrow, the villain flashes a monstrous grin and starts laughing in a hysterical macabre way. Ruka shouts, mocking that so-called harmony, celebrating that her weak father and that nuisance Saishiro are finally gone. With her eye glowing a deep red tone of pure evil, she makes a vow to everyone in the hall. She raises her fist with immense arrogance and proudly announces the arrival of the true era of the Onis. The crowd of Onis goes wild at her words, chanting Ruka's name over and over in celebration. Ruka savors that moment of triumph, thinking that was exact kind of worship she wanted so badly. She opens her arms to soak in the applause and cheers from the guests, feeling like the most powerful person in the world. Suddenly, a strange vibration begins echoing through the hall, and the lighting turns completely blue. The guests start getting confused and spooked by that sudden shift in energy around the room. Just then, the MC unexpectedly appears to strike her and lands a clean right hook straight to that monster's face. That wasn't enough. Lay into her. More, please. The strike is so heavy it drops the woman instantly, sending her flying across the room. Ruka holds her bleeding cheek and screams in rage, asking who did that, complaining that even her own father never hit her. She looks forward, unable to believe her eyes, because standing right in front of her was none other than Saishiro, her ex-husband, and he sarcastically remarks that she has gotten pretty ugly since the last time they met. Tense atmosphere settles over the room. Saishiro flashes an intimidating smile and says it has been a while since he saw the Shinki family crew, announcing that he has finally returned. Recognizing the man, all the guards and members of the Shinki family stand in total shock, paralyzed with terror. Ruka's eyes widen, filled with panic, unable to fathom how he survived the abyss. Right after, the villain's panicked look turns into an extremely twisted smile. She starts laughing out loud and clapping her hands in a mocking, ironic way to celebrate the MC's return. Ruka asks if he was actually alive and says Saishiro is just as stubborn and hard to eliminate as a cockroach. She glares at him in anger, thinking that look brings back old memories, but wonders how he is alive and looks so much younger. Ruka says he should have stayed hidden and asks if he knows the saying about the moth drawn to the flame while her guards surround him. One of the Oni guards rushes forward in a fury, attempting to throw a full power punch towards Saishiro. However, the MC remained calm and Sadama style. He drops the extra with a single weak punch. Ruka and her bodyguard, Amatsukawa, stand stunned, seeing him take down the guard so effortlessly. Saishiro looks at all of them and coldly orders them to get out of his way. Despite the warning, the other Oni guards snap and charge at him with full fury. Ruka's eyes widen in panic as she watches an unbelievable scene unfold before her. In a matter of seconds, Saishiro drops all the guards in the hall, leaving them laid out unconscious on the floor. I hope he does not drop Ruka quickly. He needs to make that monster suffer. The villain starts getting desperate, panic-stricken. She starts screaming frantically for Amatsukawa to do something fast. She turns expecting help from her loyal bodyguard, only to find him standing frozen and unresponsive. Suddenly, Amatsukawa collapses onto the floor, having also been effortlessly dealt with by the hero. Ruka looks around completely helpless, seeing she is surrounded only by her fallen henchmen. Refusing to believe what she is seeing, she screams in denial and asks herself if he really survived. Saishiro calmly explains that the legendary Shuten Doji met his end because of poisoned drink. She backs away, terrified hearing about poison, but the MC assures her he did not poison her and asks if she knows why. Saishiro steps closer and grabs Ruka's face in a calm manner that conceals a massive fury. He continues, speaking while pointing at the fallen henchman, revealing that his real master plan is to make her and all the Onis experience a true living hell from this point on. The MC forces the villain down to her knees right in front of her daughter Matsuruka's funeral portrait. Ruka flies into a rage and screams, asking what he means by living a hell. She tries to lash out, throwing a full-force punch directly into the middle of Saishiro's chest. The villain flashes an evil smirk, believing she managed to defeat her ex-husband with that strike. However, her smirk vanishes instantly upon realizing the attack dealt absolutely zero damage to him. Saishiro easily grabs her hand and starts squeezing it until he begins crushing the villain's bones. Ruka screams in agony while he coldly says she has very wicked hands for a mother. The hero maintains a dark, calm expression, mentioning he paused to think about something important. He squeezes even harder and says with deep hatred that those were the exact hands that murdered Matsuruka. With that, Ruka shrieks from extreme pain as she feels her fingers and fingernails get completely crushed by his grip. She cries out, complaining about her nails and fingers, but Saishiro just mocks her, saying those pretty hands are now ruined. Next, he firmly grabs her other arm and warns that in that case, he should do the exact same thing to her other hand, crushing it ruthlessly while she shrieks in pain. Ruka breaks down on the floor, weeping heavily, frantically calling out Saishiro's name in pure desperation. Feeling unbearable agony, the demon screams, begging him to stop this once and for all. Saishiro just looks down at her with an icy glare, showing zero mercy. He asks what she just said, staring at her with a terrifying aura and glowing red eyes. Ruka completely loses her breath from pure terror, breaking into a cold sweat under that crushing pressure. She wonders if that monster in front of her is really Saishiro, but recognizes it is the exact same face the villain recalls how he used to be in the past, back when he still showed a sweet, gentle side. But looking at him now, Ruka realizes the man has transformed into a true demon. She drops into total despair, thinking the situation is so bad, she might actually end up passing away right here. Ruka bites her lip hard and shakes all over, realizing her life is in real danger. The villain drops to her knees on the floor and begs for forgiveness, weeping and thinking she cannot pass away in this place. She cries and lies, saying it was not her fault and that everything was Leon's idea, determined to plead for her life to survive. She screams through tears, saying it was a plot by the Kuki family and that she had no choice but to obey. Suddenly, Saishiro stomps with extreme violence directly onto the crying villain's face. The force of the stomp is so absurd that Ruka gets launched through the air, slamming hard against the hall's wall. She holds her battered face and begs him to wait, screaming frantically that she already apologized. Saishiro pulls her up by her hair in anger and asks why she murdered Matsuruka if she was just going to apologize later, considering she was her mother. With a demonic glare, he states he changed his mind, making Ruka let out a whimper of sheer terror. Saishiro declares with absolute coldness that he is going to end her right here, while the villain thinks he is the one who is going to pass away today out of nowhere. the bodyguard. Amatsukawa resurfaces, leaping in at high speed to attack the MC. The impact of the bodyguard strike against Saishiro triggers a massive cloud of dust and destroys the floor. In the middle of the smoke, a foot plants firmly on the ground, revealing who managed to stay standing in the clash. Amatsukawa drops into a combat stance, thinking he looks super cool saving Ruka, hoping to get a reward for it. The villain calls out his name in relief, and the guard turns completely red and giddy, hearing his name spoken by her. But the joy is short-lived as Ruka kicks his leg in annoyance, complaining that he took way too long to act. She demands he help her, and Amatsukawa gets confused hearing about poison. Realizing his body was only tingling a bit, Ruka turns away thoughtfully, trying to figure out why only he resisted the poison, and if it was due to stamina differences. She decides to ignore it for now, and commands the guard to follow her, receiving an immediate, obedient response. Ruka walks into a ruined dressing room and says to Saishiro, who is laying in the corner, that he had a lot of nerve stepping up to her. Seeing that he remains silent, the villain kicks the MC in pure rage and yells at him not to ignore her. She flashes a sinister, triumphant smile, bragging that the tables have finally turned in her favor. Ruka orders the guard to drag him outside, but Amatsukawa wonders what she plans to do with him. The demon reveals with a sadistic look that she will make him taste his own poison and live a true hell laying on the ground. Saishiro asks one more time what the real motive was for her murdering Matsuruka. Ruka answers with complete coldness that she already stated before, that she did not want any kind of dead weight ruining her life. The hero lowers his head and says he knows very well that was not the only reason she did it. He reveals that it was a requirement for her to ally with the Kuki family, marry Leon, and join their clan. Saishiro explains that Matsuruka would never be accepted because she was his daughter and carried Shinki family blood. Since the Kuki clan has no heirs for Leon, Matsuruka's existence would be a huge obstacle in future power struggles. He adds that she could try to have a child with Leon, but doubts she could get pregnant given her age. That is why she murdered her daughter and tried to take him out to prove loyalty to the Kukis, asking if he is wrong. Hearing his entire deduction, Ruka's lips curl into an extremely twisted, mocking smile. She starts laughing out loud and confirms he is spot on, proudly admitting she did everything with her own hands. The villain states she will not settle for just the Kuki family and promises that humans in Onus will still crawl at her feet. Ruka says his deduction was entertaining, but reveals that Leon's sole condition for the marriage was Matsuruka's end. Saishiro keeps his head down, merely murmuring Leon's name in a mysterious, thoughtful way. Ruka then grows tired of the chat and orders Amatsukawa to hurry up and end Saishiro once and for all. Suddenly, a hand reaches from behind and covers the villain's mouth firmly, leaving her in complete shock. She tries to scream without success while Amatsukawa holds her, warning that she already talked way too much about the subject. The guard points toward the corner, frantically revealing that their entire conversation was being recorded by a camera. Meanwhile, Saishiro remains calmly sitting on the floor with a small blue light blinking on his suit. Saishiro flashes a mocking smirk and comments that she finally noticed. Pulling a cracked phone out of his suit pocket, Ruka panics and asks if he really recorded everything, getting a very calm confirmation from her ex-husband. He explains he planned to get thrown over there to use the hidden camera and that the video is uploading to his computer. Holding the device, Saishiro says with disdain that with that recording, she went from a tragic mother to a straight-up murderer. Ruka turns red with rage and grits her teeth so hard it looks like her jaw might snap. He spins the phone in his fingers and asks what would happen if the video leaked online, since she even confessed to wanting to take over the Kuki clan. Cornered and shaking with anger, the demon asks what he wants in exchange for not spreading that recording. The MC glares at her with a dark, cunning look, saying he will think about what to demand from her. Saishiro slowly lowers his gaze toward the villain's body, who is wearing a very low-cut formal dress. He then makes an outrageous demand, coldly ordering that the very first thing she must do is take off all her clothes. Put this monster in her place even more, please, and if you